If you were born in chaos, trained by pain, and destined for legacy, would you run from fate, or sharpen your sword and charge headfirst? Tonight, meet the storm with Skin the Man whose shadow still slices through time. They called him Katsuro Renjiro, and history never saw him coming. Let's set the scene for this thunderous legend. Katsuro Renjiro wasn't just a swordsman, he was a walking storm of steel, a haunted artist, and a philosopher who learned wisdom at the edge of death. His unbeaten duels? Legendary. His philosophy? Etched into the soul of warriors centuries later. Whether you're wielding a blade or battling life with your mind, Renjiro's story might just break you open or build you anew. So, before you lean back, do yourself a favor, subscribe or follow the channel if stories like this are your kind of midnight magic. And hey, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what hour of madness you're in. It's always wild seeing this strange, global campfire of ours glow to life. Now, kill the lights. Let the soft hum of a fan stir the air. Let the silence bloom. Because what's coming next is the first page of a tale so raw, so relentless, that even history flinched. The story begins in the year 1584, during what historians politely refer to as a politically volatile era in Japan, which is a nice way of saying it was an absolute bloodbath. Imagine warlords playing a national game of risk-butt. Everyone's cheating, nobody's sleeping, and the board's on fire. That was the Keisoku era, Japan's version of Game of Thrones, minus the dragons, but twice the betrayal and 10 times the swordplay. Our boy? Born right into the chaos, in a scruffy little village called Hanamura, tucked in the craggy hills of what we now call Western Shokin Province. There were no golden cradles or lullabies here. If you were lucky, you got a dry blanket and a mother who hadn't been drafted into a rice tax. Katsuro's first gift from life? A blustery wind, a rough hemp wrap, and a wooden spoon probably repurposed as a teether and a weapon. That's what we call character building in these parts. His father Daiji Renjiro wasn't your standard stern dad. He was a professional swordsman, and by professional, we mean the kind of man who believed emotions were a waste of muscle energy. He didn't teach with words, he trained with bruises. Forget playing catch Katsuro's bonding time, looked more like, here boy, take this stick, don't bleed on the tatami. Affection was rare, praise was even rarer. A smile from Daiji might have caused earthquakes. This wasn't a household built on Hugsid, was a forge, and Renjiro wasn't a son. He was a blade in the making. From the start, Katsuro wasn't exactly the obedient type. Other kids in the village bowed, chanted their lessons, played rice pile tag. He hid behind trees, plotted ambushes, and claimed victory whether anyone else was playing or not. His hands were always dirty, his kimono perpetually torn, and his stare just a little too sharp for a child. The other parents whispered. The kids avoided eye contact. His mother just sighed and washed out the bloodstains again. He wasn't raised. He was honed. Even as a child, there was something feral in him. He didn't walk stalked. He didn't ask, he challenged. If fate had tried to whisper peace into his ear, he would have headbutted it and asked for a rematch. His spirit wasn't suited for comfort. He was born wild, raised harder, and destined to leave a trail of awe and shattered egos behind him. And here's the twist most forget. Katsuro was more than a sword. Even in his youth, he sketched on temple walls, whittled shapes into sticks, and stared too long at sunsets. Somewhere between the scars and splinters, there lived an artist. His dual nature blade and brush, fire and stillness, was already carving itself into his bones. But don't mistake introspection for weakness. By the age of 7, his father had already thrown him into mock duels with grown men. Mock, of course, meaning you might break a few ribs, but don't die. Katsuro didn't just survive, he adapted. He learned footwork from watching crows land. He mimicked sword grips from shadows on the wall. He studied everything, like his life depended on it. Because it did. While most boys were still figuring out how not to cry when they scraped a knee, Katsuro was learning how to read the twitch of a wrist that might mean death. His childhood wasn't a storybook, it was a gauntlet. And slowly, day by painful day, he began to turn into exactly what his father wanted, and perhaps feared. A creature built for the battlefield. Not polished, not tamed, just inevitable. His name started to echo in the village, whispered with a mix of awe and anxiety. The Renjiro kid, the mad one, the little storm with fists. He'd win sparring matches he shouldn't, predict moves he hadn't seen before, and walk away bloodied but grinning. There was no applause, no certificates, just nods, just colder challenges. He didn't care. He didn't need cheers. He had something else, something hungrier. And while we pause, here let this settle. Some legends are born from triumph, some from tragedy. But Renjiro Katsuro, he was born from purpose, forged by a father who didn't believe in mercy, sharpened by a world that didn't tolerate softness, driven by something inside that refused to stop growing sharper. This was just the beginning. So if you've got a taste for battles carved in silence, philosophies written in blood, and a legacy that dares the centuries to forget it, stick around. Follow or subscribe the channel, because what comes next? It's not just a story. It's war, wisdom, and one man walking straight into the storm, with a sword in his hand and fire in his chest. They say warriors are made on battlefields, but Katsuro Renjiro, he was built on bruises, dust, and dreams far too violent for a boy. While other kids learned nursery rhymes and stared up at stars, Renjiro's lullabies were war stories, blood-soaked tales of steel slicing through fate, of men who stood alone and didn't flinch when death came calling. By the state of the country, he wouldn't have to wait long to practice. This wasn't some picturesque village with cherry blossoms and rice cakes. Hanamura was a patch of hardened dirt where the wind reeked of smoke, horse sweat, and old regrets. It wasn't a playground, it was a training ground, the kind of place where a misplaced word could start a sword fight, and the neighbors' arguments ended with one fewer neighbor. Fairy tales? Try horror stories about lone swordsmen splitting brigands in half mid-charge. You didn't fall asleep to gentle music, you learned to sleep with one eye open. And that crib mobile above your head? Probably a few dented blades dangling from the rafters like violent wind chimes. The moment Renjiro could walk or stagger, more like a pint-sized ronin who'd already seen too much, his father shoved a wooden sword into his tiny hands. While the village children traced crude kanji into the dirt, Renjiro was learning how to block a blow that could cave in his ribs. Educational standards were different in the Renjiro household. No spelling bees, no art class, just pain management and war strategy. Forget gold stars. If you lost a match, you didn't get a pat on the head. You got a bruise in the shape of your mistake, and a reminder that next time hesitation might mean dying on real dirt, not dojo mats. Daiji Renjiro, his father, was a man of few smiles and even fewer compromises. They said he once won state duels under the old Isakawa shogunate, back when blade skill meant power. But when it came to raising a son, Daiji's love was functionally violent. He didn't explain. He didn't encourage. He didn't encourage inflicted praise. Maybe that one time Renjiro took a clean hit and didn't collapse like a rice sack. But usually, silence. Because in Daiji's mind, if you survived, you were doing fine. And if you didn't, you weren't worth much to begin with. And still, something inside Renjiro grew stronger with every scar. While the other boys whispered about the future rich wives, endless sake. The life of a merchant Renjiro was whispering to the wind, imagining the rhythm of feet in gravel, the tempo of a duel. He didn't see the sword as a weapon. He saw it as part of his body, like a third hand or a second spine. When he held it, it didn't feel foreign. It felt fated. He wasn't coddled. He was carved. Day by day, he was honed like a blade scraped against stone. There were no soft landings in his childhood, only the crack of wood against bone and the muffled growl of his father's instructions. Again, too slow. Do it blindfolded. Even before his voice changed, Renjiro understood the brutal math of the world. Strength wins, but cleverness survives. The fastest man doesn't always win, but the most unpredictable one? He walks away breathing. The villagers noticed. How could they not? That boy with the feral eyes who never smiled. That child who took a blow to the face and barely blinked. The whispers swirled. He's not right. He never cries. He watches you like he's reading your weakness. Some were afraid. Some intrigued. A few quietly admired him. But none of them understood what was growing in him. Not just skill or speed. Something colder. Something dangerous. He wasn't just learning how to fight. He was learning how to win. And then came the moment that cracked his legend wide open. He was 13, that chaotic, awkward age, where most boys are trying to figure out what a beard is, or how not to trip in front of girls. Renjiro? He was preparing to kill a man. Welcome to feudal Japan, where puberty hits harder when it's carrying a katana. A traveling swordsman named Takemon Kiba strolled into Hanamura one autumn afternoon. Kiba was a showboat, a strutting martial artist from a nearby dojo with enough arrogance to choke a horse. He spun his blade for sport and looked at the villagers like they were mud on his boots. Big mistake. Word got around fast. The Renjiro boy had challenged Kiba the Swift to a duel, a real duel. At first, the villagers laughed. Then they panicked. And finally, they bet money. People gathered. Quiet murmurs rippled like wind through wheat. Even Renjiro's family watched from a distance, wearing expressions somewhere between fear and mourning. He was still a child, still untested in true combat. They expected a quick endone final blow, a snapped arm, a lesson in humility. They were wrong. Renjiro wasn't looking for victory. He was looking for something else. Validation. A blood-soaked confirmation that everything his father did to him, the punishment, the pressure, the training, had built something real. He stepped into the clearing holding a wooden blade that still smelled like the fire it was dried beside. His stance, a little crooked. His eyes, locked on Kiba like a wolf eyeing a deer with too much pride. Kiba grinned, toying with his steel. "You sure you're not here to shine my shoes, boy?" Renjiro didn't reply. He just stepped forward. The villagers held their breath. The duel began. What happened next would be argued about for years. Some say Renjiro moved first, a blur of wild fury. Others claim he stood still, waiting, reading Kiba's motion before striking like lightning. What everyone agrees on is this: it was over in seconds. Kiba stumbled backward, clutching a cracked rib and a splintered ego. Renjiro stood over him, face blank, chest rising with quiet control. He hadn't just won. He had ended the conversation. From that moment, Hanamura didn't call him the strange boy. They called him something else, something sharper. Katsuro Renjirothe Wild Blade. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just walked away, wooden sword dragging through the dust like a lion's tail. You see, for Renjiro, the duel wasn't about fame. It was about purpose. Proof that he was what his father had always said. Not a child, not a student, a weapon. And that's just the tip of the katana. Because what follows after this victory? Let's just say the world wasn't ready. If you're still reading, gripping your seat, wondering where this blood-drenched journey leads, then follow or subscribe the channel right now. Because the next part of Renjiro's story? It gets deadlier. It gets deeper. And it starts with a river of fire, and ends with the ghosts of every man who ever doubted him. The duel begins not with drums or chants or choreographed flair, but with arrogance. Takemon Kiba, the seasoned swordsman from a flashy coastal dojo, does what overconfident men always do. He laughs. He smirks. He sizes you up and sees, what? A barefoot boy? Dirt smudged on your cheek? Hair like a bird's nest? And a stick in your hand? His first mistake was showing up. His second? Underestimating Katsuro Renjiro. You don't wait for ceremonial bows, no poetic speeches, no dramatic clouds passing over the sun. You lunge, fast, untamed, instinct, made flesh. You crash into him like a landslide breaking off a mountainside, ugly, unstoppable, and entirely unexpected. There's no time for the villagers to gasp. No time for Kiba to even lift his blade in defense. He stumbles backward, a grunt of surprise, already turning into a howl of pain, as your wooden sword drives straight into his ribs. He hits the ground hard, groaning, bloodied, and stunned. A professional samurai, brought low not by a warrior of equal rank, but by a teenager who smells faintly of smoke and rainwater. You don't just win, you detonate. You explode onto the scene of your own legend, ripping the silence apart with one decisive, humiliating blow. From that moment on, Renjiro isn't just a name muttered behind fans or whispered in back alleys. It becomes a word loaded with warning, a name to respect, a name to fear. And what of your father, Daiji Renjiro, the relentless Iron Man who trained you without kindness? He watches in that rare, still way somewhere, between pride and dread. He sees it. Everyone does. The weapon he forged is no longer a boy. And now it's out of its sheath. But you don't grin. You don't bow. You don't even flinch. There's no joy in this, only confirmation. A cold, clean realization cutting through your soul like the wind on a winter night. You were made for this. Not to plow fields. Not to beg for coin. Not to serve. You were built to fight. To wander. To rise. Step by blood-soaked step. Through the bones of your rivals. That first strike, your first public duel, your first public victory, it should have marked the start of something peaceful. A steady path. Perhaps an apprenticeship. Maybe a job carving sandals or repairing fishing boats. Something simple. Something ordinary. But Katsuro Renjiro has never been ordinary. At just 15 years old, you make a decision that most grown men would tremble to consider. You leave. No farewell ceremony, no tearful parting, no scroll of honor from the village elders. Just a battered cloak, a weather-bitten pack, a crude steel blade, and a bone-deep refusal to live by anyone else's story but your own. You walk away from Hanamura, from your father's rigid expectations, from the soil that bore you and the house that hardened you. You walk into freedom or whatever madness lies beyond it. You become a ronin, a masterless wanderer, in a world obsessed with loyalty and hierarchy. In a time when power was measured by who you served no one. It's like crashing a royal court meeting, spitting on the floor, and strolling out whistling. Why? Because you know, deep down in that stubborn fire churning inside your ribs, you know, if you tie yourself to another man's name, you'll always be under his roof, always obeying his rules. And you didn't spend your childhood getting bludgeoned into a weapon just to polish some pompous warlord's sandals. You're not here to play politics. You're not here to pour tea or decorate helmets. You're here for one thing and one thing only: to master the blade on your own brutal terms or die trying. And trust me, wandering isn't glamorous. You don't sleep under ornate temple ceilings or silk canopies. You sleep in ditches, on rocky riverbanks, under trees that drop twigs into your mouth all night. You eat whatever you can, find moldy rice if you're lucky, roots or tree bark if you're not. Some days, even a handful of grass starts to look like a feast. Your only travel companions? Crows, mangy stray dogs. Occasionally, a curious peasant kid tugging his mother's sleeve and asking, "Mama, why does that man smell like stormwater and murder?" Your cloak is torn, your feet blister, but your sword arm grows steady. You pass through burnt-out villages and broken towns. You witness wars not spoken of in history books, family feuds turned deadly, brother against brother, all for pride or potatoes. Sometimes you help, sometimes you walk past. Always, you keep moving. And along the road, people begin to talk. A wandering swordsman beat a dojo master in Kamata. Some wild-eyed boy shattered 3 men with a wooden blade in Tatsu Fields. He fights like lightning wrapped in rage. That's you. That's your shadow growing longer. And still, no master, no allegiance. Just the wind, your sword, and the growing sense that you're being shaped by something greater. Not a man, not even a god. Fate itself. This is the chapter where Katsuro Renjiro stops being a name whispered in fear. He becomes a symbol, a storm, a ghost with a blade. And soon, very soon, the world will learn what happens when a man with no master takes on a nation built on control. But before we continue, if you're still gripped by this story, if the fire in Renjiro's path mirrors something wild in your own heart, subscribe or follow the channel right now, because we're only just unsheathing the blade. Next, the duels get bloodier, the enemies get smarter. And Renjiro? He starts to walk the line between man and legend, one sword swing at a time. Not all warriors are shaped in candlelit dojos with bamboo mats and silk-robed instructors. Some are sharpened by rivers that freeze your bones and winds that scrape your skin raw. Katsuro Renjiro found his teachers in cold water and hunger pains. Every step he took away from the village was another fragment of his old self left behind, shed like old skin on the trail. The muddy-footed village boy, gone. The hot-blooded teenager who knocked a samurai to the dirt, still there but evolving into something that made even experienced fighters pause. You didn't just wander, you hunted knowledge. Village by village, you began stepping into dojos uninvited, calling out their best students, demanding duels not out of pride but hunger, not for food for growth. Every swing you blocked, every strike that landed against your ribs, every scar etched into your forearm, it all became part of the map you were drawing in your mind. A blueprint not of land, but of perfected violence. And you learned fast, too fast. The kind of fast that turns heads in dimly lit inns, the kind of fast that gets your name carried down mountains and across rivers. There's a boy out there, they whispered in hushed tones. A wild ronin with a blade keener than a tax collector's tongue. He doesn't speak much, but he wins. And in all those empty miles, those frost-bitten nights and silent morning sparrings with your own shadow, an idea began to form. Maybe the sword isn't just for killing. Maybe it's a path. A path not toward conquest or titles, but toward something higher. You didn't have a word for it yet, but you knew one thing. You just had to keep walking. And what made you so dangerous, what made the entire samurai caste so uncomfortable, was how little you resembled them. They showed up in cities like parade floats, hair slicked, armor gleaming, blades tucked into spotless scabbards like silverware at a noble's table. Their uniforms were statements: I am a man of honor. I am a warrior. You, meanwhile, wandered into towns looking like a natural disaster that found a sword and grew legs, hair like a thundercloud, kimono torn at the shoulders, mud crusted to your calves like extra skin. If there was polish on your blade, it was probably just dried blood. You didn't look honorable. You looked dangerous. At first, people laughed. How could they not? You looked like you'd been kicked out of civilization and were now chasing chickens just to stay in shape. But then they saw you move, and the laughter died. Because beneath the wild beard and the battered cloak, there was no sloppiness, no hesitation, no wasted breath. The moment your sword left its sheath, everything changed. The street brawler disappeared, and what stood in his place was pure, focused efficiency, a creature who didn't fight for points or to impress aristocrats sipping tea from shaded porches. You fought like a starving wolf, fast, direct, unapologetically lethal. Other warriors danced. You finished. They flicked at each other with polite cuts, waiting for a chance to bow mid-fight. You stepped through that nonsense, jammed a blade into their ribs, and ended the question before it began. It wasn't dishonorable. It was reality. You understood something most didn't. Wars aren't won by elegance. They're won by survival. While polished samurai checked the tilt of their helmets in shop windows, you were already 2 steps inside their guard, dragging their pride across the dirt. And the whispers grew. He doesn't fight like a man, they said. He fights like something older. A demon with a blade, a shadow that doesn't sleep, a sword spirit sent to test the arrogance of the warrior elite. And still, you kept walking. You never stayed long. You'd beat a dojo's top fighter, nod once, and vanish before the morning fire was stoked. You didn't demand payment. You didn't boast. You weren't building a brand. You were becoming. But behind the stories of your victories, something deeper was forming. A legend with no clean origin. the kind that spreads in rice shops and roadside inns, between sips of cheap sake. Don't duel the wild one. Don't even speak to him if he's sharpening his blade. I saw him defeat a man with 3 moves, 2 of which were just stepping closer. They say if you draw your sword and blink, he's already behind you. Children started mimicking your gait with sticks. Dojo masters started preparing their students for encounters with you. And not because of how you looked, because of how you fought. People stopped seeing the torn clothes, the uncombed hair, the missing sandal. They saw efficiency wrapped in chaos. Even lords began whispering, "Who is this boy with no crest? No name on any scroll? No loyalties, yet somehow feared more than entire schools of trained warriors?" Some wanted to hire you. Others wanted you dead. And you wanted only one thing: truth through combat. Not revenge, not fame, not wealth, just clarity. That split second between blades clashing when you know exactly who you are and who you aren't. And that is the space Katsuro Renjiro lived in, not in castles or courts, but in that small, brutal moment where swords speak the only language that matters. A language he was beginning to master. The sword, once a tool of survival, was becoming something else: a compass, a philosophy, a mirror. And with every duel, every whisper, and every footstep on the cracked roads of a divided nation, Renjiro was no longer just a ronin. He was the question every samurai hoped no one ever asked. What if someone without rules becomes better than those who built them? If that thought sends a chill up your spine, or if you're starting to suspect this story won't end quietly, then make sure you subscribe or follow the channel, because the next part of Renjiro's journey, it turns darker, sharper, and he's about to face a man who doesn't care about honor, only vengeance. Campfires burn low across distant fields, and your name rides on the wind like smoke haunting, unclaimed, unstoppable. But here's the thing: Katsuro Renjiro couldn't care less about glory, fame, reputation, applause. They're all just echoes in rooms he never enters. You don't fight for adoration. You fight for transformation. Because deep inside, you know something most people never want to admit. The world doesn't pet wolves. It shoots them. So the only way to survive? Become the wolf they can't kill. With the open road for your ceiling and a blade for a pillow, you dive headfirst into what might be history's most violent version of self-improvement. Others take up pottery. Some collect seashells. You collect bodies' victories, preferably before breakfast. It's a simple lifestyle. Wander into a town, scan the crowd for the loudest ego in a kimono, walk straight up to them, and say something like, "You, fight. Now." No paperwork, no permissions, just bruises, blood, and a lesson someone will never forget. Dojo masters hate you. Tavern warriors whisper your name like a bad omen. You leave behind cracked ribs, dented pride, and the occasional broken porch. If rural Japan had warning signs, yours would be posted at every village gate. Caution: wild ronin may appear without notice, and nobody knows how to handle you. You're too raw, too feral, too unorthodox. You don't follow the rules because, let's be honest, you've probably never even read them. You don't wear shining armor that glints in the sun. Your blade isn't tucked into an expensive silk sash, it's just there, part of you, like a limb forged in fire. And ceremonies? Please. While other swordsmen bow 5 times, recite the names of their ancestors, and compose a last haiku before they draw, you're already halfway through the duel. You don't stall. You don't pose. You don't wait for applause. You assess. You strike. You move on. Quick, brutal, efficient. Sometimes you fight with a katana. Other times, just a bamboo stick. If the stories are true, you flattened a respected martial arts teacher, using nothing but a broken boat paddle. Why? Because to you, it was never about the weapon. It's always been about the mind. And your mind? It's a weapon forged sharper than your blade, and far more dangerous. It cuts through hesitation, reads fear like a poem, and rewrites the end of every fight before it begins. You begin to study not just technique but people. How they grip too tightly when they panic. How their chests tighten right before a desperate lunge. How their eyes twitch a fraction before a feint. You become a predator who doesn't just defeat your enemies, you unmake them. You learn that pride is a bright red target. Honor is predictable. Fear is universal. And you use all of it. By the time you're still counting your age with fingers, your win record looks ridiculous. More victories than festivals in a farming year. More bruised egos than there are bowls of miso soup in the entire province. And yet, you never linger. No post-duel celebrations. No fanfare. No triumphant shouts echoing through the hills. You might grunt, maybe nod once. If you're feeling particularly generous, you mutter something incredibly deep like, and then you're gone. Dust kicks up as you vanish down the road toward your next opponent, your next test, your next rebirth. Because deep down, something primal is whispering to you now. You're not dueling for food anymore. Not for survival. Not even for revenge. You're dueling because every battle reshapes you into something terrifying. Something limitless. And even you are starting to wonder what exactly you're becoming. By the time you hit your late teens, your name isn't just a rumor. It's a warning. Somewhere between gifted swordsman and possibly a cursed spirit that grew a torso, you've earned a kind of mythical status equal parts awe and anxiety. You walk into towns and silence follows. Birds stop singing. Doors close a little too fast. Children peek around corners with both fascination and fear. But the real reason people can't forget you? It isn't the win streak. It's the defiance. You don't conform. You don't obey. You don't sign scrolls or kneel before lords. You're not looking for patronage or a comfortable spot under someone's banner. You don't want their approval. You want freedom, even if it cuts. And that's why Renjiro is more than just a skilled duelist. He's a challenge to an entire system, a breathing contradiction, proof that maybe, just maybe, a man with no title can still be invincible. But remember, this is just the start. Because soon, the sword won't be enough. The enemies will evolve. And you'll have to face not just warriors, but ideals, institutions, and ghosts from your past that don't carry blades, they carry memories. If that's the kind of story that stirs something restless inside you, then don't hesitate, subscribe, or follow the channel now. What's coming next? It's more than a fight. It's war on everything that tried to shape him. Everyone around you expects a story to go a certain way. Be born. Swear loyalty to a powerful lord. Train under a polished old master. In a calm dojo surrounded by bamboo. Win a few duels. Wear nice armor. Marry someone with political connections. And die with a full rice bowl. Katsuro Renjiro? He didn't get that memo. You never bowed to a lord. You never tied yourself to a banner. You didn't join a war band, swear fealty, or accept a single coin from any clan. You carved your own path with bare hands and a blade you polished on broken bones. You wear and proudly remain a ronin, a samurai without a master. In a society where who you serve practically is who you are, this is like storming into a royal banquet barefoot, covered in road dust, and challenging the emperor to a sumo match between courses. The other warriors in their gleaming armor don't see you as bold. They see you as a walking scandal, a disgrace with a death wish, a stray dog among prized hunting hounds. No house, no patron, no crested helmet. Surely this man must be insane. But what they fail to grasp is simple. Your freedom is your deadliest weapon. You owe no one. Answer to no hierarchy. You don't waste time schmoozing political figures or scraping your knees in the dirt to impress someone with a silk hat and a pet hawk. Every ounce of your focus, every heartbeat, every drop of sweat, it all goes toward one thing: becoming sharper, smarter, deadlier. No fortress to protect you means you learn to carry your life on your back, light, silent, always ready to move. Sure, the lifestyle isn't exactly luxury. No soft beds, no court feasts, no painted courtesans whispering your name behind fluttering fans. One week, you survive entirely on stolen radishes and fish so questionable they probably questioned you back. But what you do have, it's worth more than gold, silk, or status. You have evolution. You grow beyond the brittle mold of tradition. While other swordsmen are perfecting styles passed down for centuries, you're out in the wild, writing your own. Lords try to tame you, recruit you, buy you. Some offer coin, others offer land, horses, wine, even daughters, though given your tangled hair, constant bruises, and the unshakable smell of firewood and wet moss, it's unclear if those proposals are serious or desperate. And each time, you give them a crooked nod, maybe a grunt, and walk away. Because your journey isn't paved in silk. It's carved in blood, sweat, and the silent revelations earned under stars no nobleman ever sleeps beneath. You're not here to serve, you're here to master. Not just the sword, but strategy. Not just survival, but domination. And somewhere inside, maybe something even greater. The mastery of self. You are Katsuro Renjiro, untethered, unafraid, and nowhere near finished. Then, somewhere between your 100th duel and your 1000th mosquito bite, something shifts. At first, fighting was about winning. Then it became about surviving. Then evolving. Now, it's about seeing. You begin to understand that every duel, every clash of steel, isn't just physical, it's psychological. A duel isn't about how hard or fast you swing. It's about what you know. The sword becomes a tool. Yes, but only a surface-level one. Beneath the swing of every blade is a conversation. One spoken through feints, tension, breath control, and fear. A rhythm. A pressure. Victory doesn't go to the strongest anymore. It goes to the one who understands. So you begin to watch differently. You stop just studying footwork and blade angle. Now you study them, the person, the very soul standing across from you. You notice how fear makes hands twitch before a strike, how doubt tightens their jaw, how a gust of wind might break their focuser, expose a lie in their stance. You read shoulders like maps, breath like poetry, blinks like confessions. You begin winning duels long before they start. Because now you don't just fight people, you fight their intentions. And the moment they hesitate, the moment their confidence cracks and their sword becomes a burden instead of a tool, you win. They fall not because your technique is superior, though it is. They fall because you already claimed the moment of doubt. You are no longer just a swordsman. You're a ghost inside their mind. This is the moment where the legend of Renjiro begins to step away from the rest of the warrior class. The samurai with banners and sponsors, they're stuck polishing moves and practicing poses. But you're creating something new. A fighting style that's part chess match, part lightning strike. You're rewriting combat itself. You don't just defeat opponents, you unmake their assumptions, dismantle their rhythm, and remind them what fear tastes like. You don't swing to impress. You swing to end it. Sometimes, a subtle shift in your hips, a twitch of the fingers, a step that doesn't belong in any scroll can send a seasoned warrior into panic. Add a crooked grin, the first they've ever seen on your face, and you can watch their courage drain into the dirt. You win duels before blades touch. You destroy fighters who never even realized the duel had started. And when it ends, when they're on the ground, gasping or broken, they're not just defeated. They're undone. This is what makes you dangerous. Not just the blade. Not just the speed, but the clarity. You've begun mastering something the others haven't even glimpsed. And the world? It's starting to understand. Some fear you. Some want to study you. Others, they want you dead. But none of them can stop you. Because you don't move like a man following orders. You move like a storm answering only to itself. If this is the kind of path you didn't know you needed, if this story sharpens something in you, then don't hesitate to subscribe or follow the channel right now. Because we haven't even reached the part where Renjiro's duels begin rewriting history. And what's coming next? It isn't just combat. It's the moment where strategy meets chaos, where art meets death, where a warrior with no master begins to shape the world not with a crown, but with a sword. It was never just about hitting harder. It was that you struck from the future one, move ahead, every time, before your opponent even realized they were already losing. And now, you start to see life the way you see a duel. Everything is timing. Everything is strategy. Everything is the delicate, invisible line between stillness and explosive precision. The sword? It's a tool. The real weapon? Your mind. A mind sharpened by hunger, weather, humiliation, and the sound of blade meeting blade when no one was there to catch you if you lost. As you walk farther along the unkind, road-stattered, sore, and with more mosquito bites than any so-called legend should admit, you have another realization. A spark of genius born not from privilege or books, but desperation. Why limit yourself to one blade when you have two hands? The thought seems so obvious it stings. You've been following these swordmen, these proud lords and dojo-bound students who walk like peacocks and fight like sculptures. They cling to one sword, one style, one lineage as if the past itself swings the blade for them. But you've got nothing to protect but your skin and your path. So you take the unthinkable step. You train with two swords. One the long blade, forged for reach and power. The other the shorter sword, meant for defense and rapid strikes. Katana and wakizashi, both hands, both blades, at once. It's a revolutionary idea in a society terrified of revolution. The high-sitting nobles with armor polished to mirror brightness would scoff at you right before readjusting their helmets and muttering ancient family proverbs. They'd call it madness. But madness is only innovation history hasn't caught up with. You don't have the luxury of worrying about opinions. You worry about what works. You worry about staying alive. You take to the forests where there are no scrolls, no instructors, and no applause, just bark, wind, and your own limbs learning the impossible. At first, it's chaos. You trip over tree roots, drop your swords, and once manage to disarm yourself in a moment of spectacular failure. A passing squirrel looks disappointed in you. But slowly, through sweat, bruises, and grit, something shifts. Two blades, one body, one rhythm. It becomes a dance. One hand blocks while the other strikes. Left, right, pivot. You begin to flow like a river that splits into two branches, always shifting, never predictable. What was once clumsy is now fluid. What once felt insane is now instinct. You create a rhythm that no dojo ever taught. And in time, that rhythm becomes your new style, your own school of thought and combat. You name it Ryokan Ryu, the style of the Twin Fang. Not because you want to be honored, but because it helps define what the world can no longer understand. You are no longer bound to the sword style of tradition. You are forging your own. The beauty of it? No one knows how to fight you anymore. Swordsmen trained against single blades freeze. Spearmen find their distance dissolved before they can thrust. Archers? You don't even give them a chance to be frustrated. You're already inside their firing range before their fingers twitch. Opponents show up expecting a duel. They get a storm. They prepare for a fight. They get erased. Word spreads fast. People talk about you with awe and confusion in equal parts. Did you see him? He used both arms like they belonged to different gods. He parried and struck at the same time. I don't even know what hit me. He fights like no one we've trained for. And in quiet corners of polite society, the traditionalists clutch their scrolls and whimper. This boy, this wild Ronin, he's disrespecting the sacred arts. But you don't hear them. You're too far ahead. Too busy surviving, winning, inventing. You're not here to impress academies. You're here to carve a new trail through the collapsing ruins of a rigid, dying world. One where adaptability, not ancestry, defines mastery. Every fight now has a deeper pulse. It's not just about blade speed or footwork, it's about seeing your opponent's whole life in their posture, in their breath, in how they grip the hilt with too much tension or shift their weight a beat too soon. You've become something more than just a duelist. You've become a mirror, reflecting your enemy's flaws right back at them. Your two-sword style isn't about flash, it's about control. It's about turning every situation into an advantage. It's about asking the one question no samurai ever wants to answer. What if tradition is holding you back? And the answer you deliver with every strike? Yes, it is. You've become a threat to everything they believe in. Because if you can defeat the best swordsman in the land, if you can do it with no master, no scrolls, no dojo, no lineage, only discipline, observation, and an idea, then what's the point of everything they've been told to honor? You are no longer just a man. You are a reckoning. And yet, you're not even close to done. Because somewhere ahead, out there beyond the horizon, and across the next river and the next mountain pass, there are warriors who still cling to their traditions, waiting to prove you wrong. But they're not ready. Not for what you've become. Not for what you're still becoming. If this story is striking a nerve in your sulaf, you're starting to realize that fighting isn't about the past, but about what you do right now, then make sure you subscribe or follow the channel. Because Katsuro Renjiro hasn't even drawn blood from the real challengers yet. What's coming next is war. One man, two blades, and 1,000 warriors about to learn that the future doesn't wait for permission. Victory is becoming a habitant, you're just getting warmed up. By now, Katsuro Renjiro isn't just a rumor whispered over cheap sake. You're a legend with legs. The kind that drifts into quiet towns, flattens their proudest champion, and vanishes into the morning mist before anyone can even start whittling your name into a wooden sign. But storms don't exist to intimidate villages forever. Eventually, they look to the horizon for mountains to destroy. And you're ready to level 1. That mountain comes in the form of the Kaizoku Skula clan, not known for scrappy dojo brawls, but for being practically an empire. They're not just respected, they're entrenched. Their name carries weight in Kashihara, one of the most revered cultural centers in the region. A city of silver ink calligraphy, clean-shaved warriors, and egos inflated like festival lanterns. The Kaizoku clan isn't just a school. It's a monument, a pedigree, a performance. Their warriors speak in polished metaphors, swing their swords with mathematical grace, and believe their techniques have divine approval, which, of course, makes it the perfect target. So you walk into Kashihara, dusty, ragged, smelling like rain, dirt, and destiny. You march straight past the polished gates of tradition and issue a challenge to the clan's most revered instructor, Kaito Kaizoku, head of the school and poster child for polished perfection. Kaito hears your name and doesn't even blink. He sees you as a bump in the road, a curiosity to be swept aside in front of an audience. Big mistake. He accepts. The duel is announced with fanfare. Formalities are arranged. The nobles gather in colorful robes. Students line the training fields. They expect a quick, public Lasona moral victory wrapped in steel. The only one who doesn't expect that? You. You walk into the field as quiet as mist rolling over stones. No grand gestures. No bow that lasts too long. No witty lines. Just your breath, your blade. Your eyes locked on Kaito like a hawk spotting a sleeping rabbit. And when the moment comes, you strike not like a swordsman, but like a natural disaster. Your blade tears through his defenses like a storm smashing a rice paper wall. One strike leads into another. There's no wasted motion, no flare, just force, precision, and clarity. And then he falls. Kaito Kaizoku, the iron pillar of his prestigious school, collapses in front of his students, his backers, and half the city's scandal-hungry population. The defeat isn't elegant. It's not poetic. It's absolute. You don't wait for applause. You don't gloat. You don't offer your name to bards and poets. You tug your worn-out cloak tighter, turn into the nearest alley, and disappear. Why? Because this isn't your finale. It's just another stone in your path. You've cracked the wall of an empire, but you already know empires don't fall with one blow. They retaliate. The Kaizoku school doesn't take this well. Losing to a scrappy ronin who looks like he bathes in waterfalls and shares sleeping space with goats isn't just a bruise, a catastrophic injury to their pride. So they do what every self-important institution does when threatened. They send more muscle. Enter Renshiro Kaizoku younger brother to Kaito, a man who looks like he was forged in anger and iron filings. Bigger, meaner, less philosophy, more fists. If Kaito was the school's face, Renshiro is its clenched jaw. He doesn't issue a flowery challenge. He issues a threat. The city buzzes. The gossip spreads like fire through dry grass. Another duel. Another clash of tradition versus wild instinct. Will this be the match that finally topples the Ronin's luck? Will honor be restored to the Kaizokune? Will someone please refill the sake? You remain calm. Because if Renshiro thinks rage wins duels, he clearly hasn't been paying attention. The day of the duel arrives. Kashihara's streets buzz like festival day. Onlookers whisper as you walk past some in fear, some in admiration, many in disbelief that you're even still alive. You stand on the field, cloak swaying, eyes clear. Renshiro arrives like a thunderclap. His aura is all clenched fists and seething breath. He doesn't just want to beat you. He wants to erase you. He wants to grind your name from the city's memory, scrub the stain you left on his brother's legacy, and offer your defeat like incense on the altar of pride. But while he seethes, you watch, you study, you wait, because you're not just a swordsman anymore. You are a storm with intent, a mind trained to see the cracks in the mountain before it crumbles, a predator that doesn't bite until it's certain the prey has already surrendered inside. And when the blades are drawn, it's not a duel, it's a lesson. You don't overpower Renshiro. You don't outmuscle him. You outthink him. You let his fury write the fight, then edit his errors in real time. You step where he doesn't expect. Strike where his emotion left him blind. You're not just swinging swords. You're conducting symphonies of destruction. Renshiro falls, just like his brother. Not because you're faster, but because you're already there before he even moves. Two of the finest warriors in the Kaizoku lineage. Broken, beaten, in full view of the empire that made them. And you don't take a victory lap. You don't drink in the roar of the crowd. You vanish again, a shadow with a sword, a ghost dressed in road dust. Because the war isn't over. You've cracked a legacy. Now, the empire will come for you. And you're ready. If you've followed Renjiro's journey this far, you already know this isn't just a story about swords. This is about ideas. About the man who chose evolution over obedience, instinct over tradition, and freedom over everything else. And it's only just beginning. So if you want to see how far this storm will rage, subscribe or follow the channel now, because the next challenger, he doesn't want a duel. He wants revenge. The crowd is thick and buzzing. Bets fly like mosquitoes, quick and annoying. Vendors shout over each other, selling grilled fish on sticks and roasted rice balls, because apparently nothing pairs better with life-or-death combat than a light snack. Somewhere in the crowd, someone's already drunk, already chanting your name. Others whisper in awe or disbelief. Renshiro Kaizoku enters the arena like a thundercloud that learned how to walk. He's armored, snarling, every step daring the earth to crack beneath him, muscles stacked like bricks, rage pouring from his eyes. He's here for one thing, your head on a ceremonial platter. And you? You arrive the way you always do. Dusty sandals, frayed clothes, hair like you fought a tornado and won. There's no tension in your posture, just calm, the unsettling kind. The look in your eyes says, I've already ended this fight 3 different ways, and one of them might make you cry in front of your ancestors. The duel begins. Renshiro charges, all brawn and brutality. He's a hammer looking for a nail and he's convinced you're it. But you're smoke in the wind. A step back, a pivot. You're not dodging, you're reading him. His movements are like a bad play performed too loudly. His anger makes him predictable. His strength makes him slow. And when the opening comes, you don't hesitate. You strike clean, hard, surgical. The blow lands like fate, answering a question no one wanted to ask. Renshiro falls Shivi, defeated, face down in the dirt. The last hope of the once proud Kaizoku clan has collapsed in front of half of Kashihara. The silence is suffocating. Some people gasp. Others cheer. A few immediately reconsider every decision that led them to study swordsmanship. The Kaizoku clan has now lost 2 sons to the same dirty-footed Ronin who probably sharpens his sword on river rocks and sleeps on moss. And you? No speech, no bow, no smug grin, just one subtle tug of your cloak against the breeze, and then you vanish, fading into the side streets like a shadow no one dares follow. Because you know, this isn't over. The Kaizoku aren't finished. They have 1 card left and it's going to be anything but honorable. There's a sting to defeat, but public defeat, with witnesses, with nobles, with gossip swirling through every tea house and barracks, that's not a sting. That's a scarand. The Kaizoku clan is covered in it. They've lost 2 heirs. They've lost the illusion of superiority. They've lost control of the story. So now, faced with the collapse of their legacy, the once mighty Kaizoku school must choose honor or revenge. Guess which they pick. They plan one final duel, but this isn't about swords anymore. This is about spectacle, desperation, blood. They send word, you are to face Kaide Kaizoku, the newly named head of the clan, a young man barely older than a ceremonial teacup, pushed forward like a pawn on a flaming chessboard. The challenge is a farsa trap wrapped in tradition. You know it. Everyone knows it. Because Kaide's no warrior, he's a figurehead, a distraction. The real plan? Ambush. Dozens of Kaizoku warriors hide nearby, ready to turn your duel into a group execution. Their goal isn't a clean win, it's elimination. They want your legacy buried beneath a pile of swords and lies. And here's what makes you, well, you. You smell the setup from a mile away. The timing's off. The silence too rehearsed. The whole challenge stinks like fish left in the sun. So, what do? You show up early. Before the trap is sprung. Before the hidden swordsmen are in position. Before the illusion of fairness can be dressed up in silks and ceremony. You walk into the fog, your sword already drawn, gliding through the morning mist like a specter built for retribution. Kaede barely gets a word out. No speech, no pose. Just the wide-eyed realization that he was never meant to be part of this battle. And then one clean cut. No drama. Just precision. Like a thunderclap in silence. Chaos explodes. Kaizoku warriors burst from hiding, shouting, swords flashing. They come screaming like a hive of hornets kicked over by fate. But you don't panic. You don't run. You move. Swift, silent, surgical. You cut through the chaos like it owes you something. Blade slicing through would-be killers. Movements so fluid they blur. You're not fighting. You're dismantling. Every swing is a sentence. Every parry a death sentence rewritten in blood. They came with numbers. But they weren't ready for a man who'd already lived the ambush in his mind 100 times. By the time they organize, by the time someone yells something coherent, you're gone. Nothing left but groans in the dirt and the echo of footsteps in the fog. you vanish into the city's outskirts like the ghost they tried to kill. The Kaizoku school, once a pillar of prestige, collapses under the weight of its own failure. 2 sons dead, a legacy shattered, a third heir cut down before he ever had a chance to swing. The ambush that was meant to rewrite the story has only confirmed it. They were outmatched from the start. And you? You don't celebrate. You don't stay. You just keep walking into the wind, into the unknown, sword sheathed but never far. Because for Katsuro Renjiro, this was never about revenge, never about pride. This is about perfection. And perfection doesn't rest on victories. It demands evolution. After your destruction of the Kaizoku clan, your legend ignites like a lit match tossed into a dry field. But this time, it's not admiration that fills the air. It's fear. You're not just seen as a powerful swordsman anymore. You're seen as a force. Something outside of rank and ritual. Something too dangerous to be explained away. So if you followed this far, and your blood runs a little colder or a little hotter knowing men like this once walked the earth, then now is the time to subscribe or follow the channel. Because the road ahead, it doesn't lead to comfort. It leads to confrontation. And Renjiro is about to meet his greatest enemy yet, himself. At this point, you're no longer just a warrior. You're a problem. A riddle no sword can solve. A rumor that walks, breathes, and carries twin blades crusted in history. Katsuro Renjiro isn't seen as a dangerous swordsman anymore. That would be too easy. No, you're something harder to explain. Something harder to face. You're a weather system with a heartbeat. Word of you spreads across provinces like wildfire in dry bamboo. By now, entire regions are on edge. The message is simple and terrifying. If you see a ragged man with 2 swords and eyes like stone, walk the other way. That's not just a man. That's the thing that killed the Kaizoku clan and left nothing standing but fear. And what's wild? It's not even an exaggeration. At this stage, it feels like individual swordsmen are just appetizers. Even ambushes don't work anymore. Armies, actual formations of trained warriors, might be a better match. But even that feels optimistic. Facing you isn't like facing a man, it's like trying to punch a lightning strike. It's less about blades and more about surviving the event of you. Sure, the skills are terrifying. The dual blade style, the speed, the unpredictable rhythm. But your most devastating weapon? It's not steel. It's psychological warfare. Most opponents are already breaking before they even draw their blade. Because by now, when they hear your name, they don't think of a fighter. They think of the stories. The boy who felled a grown warrior at 13. The Ronin who snapped the spine of an elite sword school like it was dry wood. The wanderer who once used a paddle to beat a spearman unconscious and allegedly, depending on the storyteller, once tamed a rabid dog mid-fight just to prove a point. They step onto the dueling ground already sweating, already doubting. And you breathe that doubt in like it's mountain air. You've learned something essential. Steel kills flesh. But fear kills the soul. Some opponents don't even last long enough to test your swords. They look into your eyes, see the quiet storm building there, and break. Some tremble. Some stammer out excuses. Some drop their weapons and bow so deeply they might as well be praying. A few brave ones charge anyway, convinced they're the one to bring you down. They realize, too late, that they aren't facing a man. They're walking straight into the collapse of everything they believe in. You're not Renjiro the duelist anymore. You're Renjiro the myth. Renjiro the collapse. Renjiro the storm. And you just keep walking. The country cracks beneath your footsteps. With the Kaizoku clan humiliated, your name has become untouchable. Every warrior with more pride than sense either fears you or wants to fight you, or both. You could have stopped. You could have cashed in your legend, found a rich lord to serve, wrapped yourself in brocade robes, sat in a castle sipping imported tea. Could have married into a noble family, earned land, respect, indoor plumbing. But you don't. because you know a terrible truth. Castles are cages with better furniture. So instead, you choose the one thing no one expects from a man who's already earned the world's respect. You choose the road. What follows is not a chapter, it's a season of wandering. No map, no destination, just purpose, humming in your bones like a string pulled tight. You drift through rice paddies, mountain trails, crumbling villages. You walk through dust, rain, snow. You eat what you can find, sleep where you fall, and carry with you one constant obsession: mastery. You're not just chasing stronger enemies, you're chasing knowledge, style, technique, insight. Swordmasters, monks, hermits, highwaymen, it doesn't matter. If they fight, you want to face them. If they know something you don't, you want to learn, even if that lesson comes at the edge of a blade. Sometimes you challenge them. Sometimes they challenge you. Sometimes you just accidentally steal someone's favorite rice ball and find yourself dueling in an alley at sunset. Travel is messy, but in that mess, something extraordinary happens. Your style evolves. You become a river carving, stone changing shape, growing sharper, discarding what no longer serves you. You aren't interested in dueling for gold, for fame, or for legacy. You duel to become. Every opponent is a mirror. Every fight is a reflection of what you are and what you aren't yet. You break those mirrors again and again, and each time, you walk away sharper. Your clothes get rougher. Your sword gets quicker. Your eyes? Colder. Smarter. More dangerous. People begin to whisper stories not about your skill, but your nature. Katsuro fought 3 warriors at once using only a folding fan. He disarmed a horseman with a glance. I heard he once killed a man and gave him life advice before the body hit the ground. Are they true? Who knows? But in this world, the truth bends when it fears you. And it fears you a lot. You become legend not because you want it, but because you can't stop evolving. You are a storm that learns, a sword that rewrites itself, a man who grows more dangerous with every duel because you never stop hunting your next version. So here's the truth, and you know it deep down. The greatest enemy left isn't another school. It's not a lord or a swordsman or a bandit king. It's the version of you that hasn't arrived yet. That's what you're chasing. That's what you fear and crave in equal measure. And if you followed this story this Farif, your heart quickens at the idea of a man turning himself into a myth just by refusing to stop growing. Subscribe or follow the channel right now. Because Renjiro isn't done. Not even close. And what comes next is the duel he never expected. The one against himself. They say you once defeated a master spearman using only a broken fishing pole. Another story claims you stared so intensely at a bear that it apologized, turned around, and politely left the forest. Are those tales true? Maybe. Maybe not. But you don't bother correcting anyone. Because while the world is obsessed with polishing your legend, you're only interested in one thing: sharpening your soul. And if that journey leads you deeper into shadowy forests, over ice-glazed rivers, through sun-scorched mountain passes that no map dares name, so be it. You don't follow banners. You don't chase titles. You don't serve legacies carved into stone. You follow the blade and the hunger inside it, while other warriors lash their fate to lords, to bloodlines, to ancestral rules. You tie yours to the tip of your sword and the endless, aching pursuit of something greater than mere victory. Something that's harder to define. Something like truth. And somewhere along that path, after years of combat, countless battles, and duels that left entire schools speechless, something unexpected begins to stir in your calloused, war-hardened heart. Not more desire for glory. Not a thirst for more blood. Something else. Something quieter. Something deeper. Art. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It creeps in like mist over a river. After a brutal day of sparring with monks or dodging bandits on a forest path, you find yourself sitting by a fire, picking up a brush instead of a blade. At first, it's a disaster. Your calligraphy looks like a drunken frog stepped in ink and danced across the parchment. Crooked lines, uneven pressure, something between a symbol and a sneeze. But you don't curse it, you study it. Because just like with the sword, you never expect it to be good. You only expect to become good through patience, through failure, through discipline. So you practice, and practice, and slowly, the chaos becomes form. Soon, you're painting landscapes, rivers that curve like a sword strike, birds frozen mid-flight, cherry blossoms bending with wind you can almost hear. The strokes come alive. Swift, elegant, deliberate. You realize something that cuts deeper than any duel. The same spirit that guides your sword guides your hand. Swordsmanship and art, they're not opposites. They're twins. Both demand presence. Both demand rhythm. Both require the ability to see clearly and leave your mark with grace. Each line of ink becomes a movement. Each brush stroke, a strike. It's not just painting, either. You begin carving figures from fallen wood foxes, masks, spirals. You practice the tea ceremony, like a general rehearsing a campaign precise, sacred, serious. You study poetry. You read Zen scriptures, scrolls on strategy, and even fables told by children in villages most men would ride past without seeing. You become something strange, a walking contradiction. A man who can kill 10 swordsmen before breakfast and then paint a cherry tree branch with such fragile beauty that it makes monks go silent. Your old peers don't know what to do with this version of you. This is Katsuro Renjiro, the storm who humbled the Kaizoku clan, the vagabond whose sword has tasted more blood than most armies, the swordsman who's said to have once fought in his sleep and won. Now he's meditating on rocks, carving wooden fish, and quoting poetry between battles. They murmur, they joke, they roll their eyes, but none of them challenge you, because the ones who have aren't around anymore. You understand now, all of it, the sword, the ink, the silence, the violence is part of the same journey. You're not here to conquer others. You're here to conquer yourself, to push deeper into the unknown chambers of the soul, where the blade meets the breath, where pain becomes clarity, and where the next evolution of your being waits with calm, deadly patience. One day, you sketch a koi fish leaping up a waterfall with such perfect control and motion that a monk weeps beside you. You don't even notice. You're already onto the next brushstroke. Because for you, even beauty must move forward. The legend continues to mutate. Katsuro Renjiro once cut down 5 attackers, then offered the survivor a lecture on tea etiquette. I heard he lives alone on a mountain now, building shrines out of fallen swords. He writes poems so sharp they can slice a man's confidence in half. Are these things true? It doesn't matter. What matters is that the line between truth and myth blurs and you're still walking it, one dusty step at a time. You don't wear fancy robes. You don't sign scrolls. You don't belong to a school. You belong to the path. And the path, in return, belongs to no one. It's in your sword. It's in your silence. It's in the slow, graceful motion of your brush as it leaves a streak of black across paper like a whisper with weight. You've become something terrifying, not because of how fast you move or how hard you strike, but because of how deeply you see. When others look at a field, they see grass. You see wind patterns. You see the curve of footfalls. You see the enemy before they even move. And now you're beginning to see yourself the same way. That, above all, is your sharpest blade. And if this transformation from warrior to wanderer, from duelist to artistif, this deepening of the storm has kept you here, then make sure you subscribe or follow the channel. Because Renjiro's next step isn't just another fight. It's the point where mastery meets meaning. And when that happens, even silence becomes lethal. You fought warlords. You broke dojos. You destroyed bloodlines with nothing more than a blade and a blank expression. Now, you're painting. Some laugh. Others scoff. He used to tear through warriors like parchment, now he's brushing flowers on it. Let them talk. You don't flinch. Because you see something they can't. Victory is temporary. Mastery is eternal. A sword wins the moment, but art echoes forever. And somewhere deep inside, you've understood a truth that even your most dangerous opponents missed. One day, your hand will shake. One day, your step will slow. One day, the duels will end. But the soul, the spirit, the vision, those outlive flesh. They endure in ink, in wood, in words. You're no longer just a swordsman. You're a creator, carving your essence into the world, one perfect brushstroke at a time. And as you sit by a quiet riverbank, brush in one hand, tea cooling beside you, the morning sun warming your worn cloak, you smile. A ghost of one, barely there, because the path is wider than you ever imagined. And you're only just beginning to understand how far it goes. As you move deeper into your 30s, the legend only grows. Behind you lies a trail of broken blades, shattered styles, and haunted stories. Your victories stretch across the land like a winding road made of bruised egos. You didn't just duel men, you unwrote them. But now, something new begins to stir. A name, a whisper, an echo with teeth. Sasaki Kajiro. At first, it's rumor, bar talk, drunken half-truths in smoky inns, and roadside whispers under rain-soaked lanterns. There's a man out there, one with a blade like lightning, so long it could strike the moon. Undefeated, just like him. They mean you, but they also don't. Because Kajiro is different. You're not easily rattled by reputations. After all, you are the reputation that keeps arrogant dojo masters up at night. But this one? He's not a footnote waiting to be crushed. He's not a noble's hired blade puffed up on pride. He's not clinging to the dusty customs of yesteryear. Kajiro is precise. He's fast. He's lethal. He carries a blade so long the Manahoshi Zao, nicknamed the drying pole, that it borders on ridiculous. The first time you hear its full length described, you half wonder if he's compensating for something. You don't say it aloud, of course. That would be rude. But the thing that strikes you isn't his weapon. It's his style, the swallow cut. It mimics the movement of a bird's wing, sharp, graceful, impossible to predict. Not brute force, not overwhelming pressure, just pure, elegant death. Kajiro doesn't fight like a man trying to prove something. He fights like a man who already knows exactly who he is. And that's what makes him terrifying. He's not a contrast to you. He's a reflection. Where you are the wild blade, the storm, the untamed force of nature. He is composed, clean, polished like a blade displayed, yet still deadly in motion. If you are the earthquake, he is the precision scalpel. If you are the avalanche, he is the arrow. And that realization excites you, not because you want to win, because you want to understand. You don't chase opponents anymore for victory. You haven't for years. You chase the duel because the duel is truth. And Kajiro? He may be the sharpest truth yet. You begin hearing more about him as the days stretch on. He once split a falling leaf in half with his drawstroke. They say his blade is so fast it sings through the air like a flute. He doesn't fight for money. He fights for clarity. Sound familiar? Because it should. He's you, but shaped by different roads, refined by different fires. And the world? It's quietly preparing for something it hasn't seen in generations. 2 undefeated swordsmen, 2 living legends, 1 inevitable collision. But you're in no rush. You still paint. You still walk the forests. You still carve the world in your own shape. Because this isn't about revenge, or status, or settling scores. This is about evolution, about growth, about the final sharpening of the soul against its greatest whetstone. When you meet him and you know you will, it won't be a brawl. It won't be a clash of egos. It will be a conversation in steel. Somewhere, deep in a temple garden, you draw a single black line across a scroll. It's simple, stark, perfect. And as you look at it, something clicks in your mind. You are no longer just sharpening the sword. You are sharpening the self. If you followed this path with Renjiro so far, you already know what's coming. The duel history will never forget. But this won't be just a contest of speed or strength. This will be a duel between two philosophies, between two lives forged differently but aimed at the same unanswerable question. What does it truly mean to master the blade? So stay close, watch the road, and subscribe or follow the channel because the storm is finally about to meet the silence. And the only thing sharper than their blades will be what they learn from each other. It's strange. In a way, you're excited. Not the kind of excitement that trembles or fidgets, not childish glee. No, this is something deeper. Something that starts in your bones and coils outward. Finally, not another blowhard with a sword and a family crest. Not another puffed-up noble's lackey-swinging borrowed style. Not another duel you win before it starts. This is different. You've spent years carving through tradition and tearing holes in legacy. But now, here comes someone who might actually force you to dig deeper, to stretch, adapt, transform. Someone who might sharpen you in ways no duel ever has. That someone is Kojiro. Word eventually reaches your ears through cautious mouths and reverent tones. Kojiro has accepted the post of fencing master to a high lord, prestigious, lavish, respectable, high pay, silk robes, warm baths. And you? You're still sleeping in barns, curled in corners beside goats who don't even move when you roll over in your sleep. You've used your travel cloak as a blanket, a towel, and, once or twice, a makeshift soup bowl. But it doesn't matter, because you know one thing with absolute certainty. Paths like yours and Kojiro's were never meant to run parallel. They were always meant to collide. The rumors swell around the countryside like thunderclouds on the horizon. They spread from fishing towns to mountaintop temples. Two undefeated swordsmen. Two masters of timing, silence, and death. Two living legends. And somewhere deep inside you, beneath the quiet calligraphy, the patience, the daily rituals of discipline, the fire stirs again. The wolf inside you lifts its head. Your hands itch. Your blades hum. You feel it. Not dread. Anticipation. And you smile not wide, not cruel, just faintly. Enough for the wind to notice. Because you know what's coming. And you're ready. The challenge doesn't arrive in silk envelopes. There are no armored messengers bearing crests or horns. No banners, no trumpets, just a few quiet words passed carefully by trembling mouths. Kojiro has accepted. No politics, no ceremony, just you, him, two swords, and a promise sealed in silence. The duel is set for a small, rocky island in the Kana Straits, a place so remote and unbothered it may as well have been chosen by the gods. Ganrakujima. No distractions, no interruptions, just wind, water, and the unblinking sky. The kind of stage where men either rise to myth or vanish entirely. You hear the location and the date like someone might hear the weather. Calm, distant, already processed. Where others would lose sleep, pace through the night, write flowery death poems, polish armor until the sun rises, you just sit. Challenge accepted. But your preparation? It's not what anyone expects. You don't meditate in temples. You don't recite ancient dueling codes or practice ceremonial bows. You don't even cut your hair, which by now has achieved a level of chaos that deserves its own scroll. Instead, you prepare the only way that ever mattered to you. You sharpen your mind. You study. Kajiro is precise. He's fast. His sword is longer than most flags, and his famous Swallow Kuta mid-range blur designed to mimic the flap of a bird's wing is deadly. But you already know this, and you've already decided. You're not going to play his game. That would be suicide. You're going to rewrite the rules entirely. On the day of the duel, you ask for a small boat. Not an entourage. Not a warship. Just you and the oarsman. As you ride through the low morning mist, you whittle something from a discarded paddle. Not just absent-minded carving, but deliberate, focused work. A bakken, a wooden sword. Crude, rough, handmade. Fashioned from an oar and a few minutes of practiced patience. Because while Kajiro is preparing to meet you with the elegance of 1,000 duels, you're arriving with nothing but breath, instinct, and intent. You're not here to win for the crowd. There will be no crowd. You're not here to reclaim pride. You never lost it. You're here to see what happens when the storm meets the edge. When the man who mastered adaptation faces the one who perfected precision. When two opposite answers to the same ancient question collide on a slab of stone surrounded by the sea. What no one realizes, perhaps not even Kajiwa, that this isn't just a fight. This is a conclusion, not of your journey, but of a chapter that began the moment you picked up a blade and realized it was also a mirror. And Kajiro? He's not your enemy. He's the final page of a book you've been writing in blood and silence. And if you followed this story this far, you know something legendary is about to unfold. Not because of fame, not because of myth, but because two men with nothing left to prove still choose to meet, just to see who the world turns toward when both blades fall silent. Subscribe or follow the channel, because what comes next isn't just a duel. It's the climax of a philosophy. And when Katsuro Renjiro steps onto that island, one truth will remain. You can prepare your sword. You can prepare your stance. But you cannot prepare for the man who has already become the blade. No polished steel. No sacred edge passed down through generations. No ornate scabbard kissed by tradition. Just a carved piece of wood, roughly the same ridiculous length as Kajiro's absurdly oversized sword. Rough, unfinished, smelling faintly of river muck, boat varnish, and rebellion. And yet there's more edge in your intent than in most men's steel. Because you understand what most warriors never grasp even after a lifetime of training. Victory doesn't come from wielding the best weapon. It comes from wielding the best mind. The boat glides through the morning mist like a whisper carried by fate. Wind tangles in your uncombed hair. Salt stings your skin. The distant cry of seabirds pierces the silence as the island of Ganrakujima grows larger, starker, more final. This isn't just another duel. It's the apex of a life spent becoming something else. You feel it in your blood, that thick, coiled silence before a storm, not fear readiness. The awareness that two forces, equal in might but opposite in nature, are about to collide in a place with no distractions, no noise, no excuses. And in the middle of that tension, you smile, a small one, because you're not here to survive. The boat nudges against the pebbled shore. You step off, barefoot, unbothered, cradling your crude wooden sword like it's a priceless artifact carved by the gods themselves, or maybe just an angry fisherman with time to kill. It doesn't matter. It's not the blade that counts. It's the hands, the eyes, the will. Across the beach, he waits. Kajiro, the infamous swordmaster, the man whose name has grown long and sharp, just like the monstrous blade he carries. He stands tall, posture, like a drawn bowstring. His robes are crisp. His face is calm too, calm. And slung across his back like a challenge from heaven is his Monohoshi Zao, the drying pole. It's not a sword. It's a statement. He's polished, prepared, perfect. And then there's you. You look like you got lost on your way to the local bar fight. Wind-wrecked hair, sun-worn clothing, and a stick that still smells like the boat you just carved it from. You're not a samurai walking to war. You're a problem walking to its solution. The onlookers gather retainers, a few officials, some curious fishermen who definitely don't belong but wouldn't miss this for the world. The murmurs start almost instantly. He's late. He's disrespectful. Is he seriously holding a stick? Some chuckle. Others shake their heads. Kojiro's lips tighten into something between a sneer and an insult. He's already angry. Perfect. Exactly as you planned. Because you didn't arrive late out of arrogance. You arrived late to disrupt him, to fracture his rhythm, to start the duel before the blades ever crossed. Because you've long known, a duel isn't won when swords clash. A duel is won the moment your opponent's mind breaks formation. Kojiro draws his blade in one motion, elegant, terrifying, a fluid masterpiece honed by countless hours of practice. The massive sword arcs like lightning, singing as it cuts the air. A weapon that long requires space, timing, precision, which is why you've done everything you can to break all three. You step forward, slowly, deliberately, your bakken held low. There's no stance, no declaration, just stillness. You watch Kojiro, not just his weapon, not just his form. You watch the tiny tremble in his jaw, the narrowing of his eyes, the twitch of muscle around his temple. He's furious. Even better, anger is weight, and you are weightless. He lunges first. No ceremony, no bow, no moment of grace. Just cold, precise violence aimed at your neck. He's fast, faster than anyone you fought. But you're not there. You've already moved. A pivot, a sidestep, a blur that the eye registers a moment too late. Your wooden blade snaps forward, not to strike, but to redirect. Not a duel. A lesson. Kojiro recovers, barely, and swings again, an upward slash meant to split you from groin to forehead. It should have worked. It's worked on everyone else. But you're not everyone else. You are Katsuro Renjiro, and you've been preparing for this fight since the first time you picked up a blade and realized the fight wasn't out there. It was in here. Your counterstrike lands. Not bone-breaking, not lethal, just precise. Right at the wrist. Kojiro staggers. The crowd gasps. You step back. Calm, balanced, watching. You're not here to punish. You're here to prove. That adaptability beats rigidity. That spirit beats style. That a carved oar in the right hands is more dangerous than a masterpiece in the wrong mind. Kojiro adjusts, shifts his stance, his eyes clear. Good. Let him come back. You didn't come to embarrass him. You came to meet the truest version of him. The man behind the technique. And for the next few minutes, maybe seconds, maybe eternities, you and Kojiro dance on that narrow island like gods testing each other's limits. Your wooden blade whistles. His steel one sings. You faint. He answers. You fall back. He presses. It's not a duel anymore. It's a conversation in motion. A dialogue written in the language only warriors like you two can understand. And then the final moment. Not grand. Not slow. Just inevitable. You break his guard. A downward strike that lands with a crack not on his skull, but his pride. He falls. Not hard, not flailing. Just defeated. Utterly. Silently. Completely. You stand there, bakken still raised. Kojiro breathes heavily. He nods. Not in rage. Not in shame. But in respect. Because he knows, and so do you. This was never about fame. Never about glory. Never even about winning. This was about truth. And on that island, between the storm and the blade, you both found it. If you followed this story, You've walked with a man who turned pain into poetry and violence into vision. And if you want to see where Renjiro walks next after this fight, after this turning point, subscribe or follow the channel now. Because what's coming next isn't just the aftermath of a legendary duel. It's the rebirth of a warrior into something even greater. They say his technique could cut the wings off a bird in mid-flight. They say it was flawless beautiful even. Fast as wind, sharp as fate, and so precise it could have been written in calligraphy. The swallow cut, Kajiro's signature, his pride, his final play. But as he moved ready to unleash that deadly arc, something happened. Not a stumble, not a slip, a hesitation, barely a blink, barely real. But it was there. Maybe it was the sight of you, this wild man with sea-tangled hair and a boat oar in his hands instead of a blade. Maybe it was the absurdity of the moment. Or maybe it was something deeper, a flicker of realization that you weren't like the others, that this wasn't a duel. This was a reckoning. And in that heartbeat, the one where his mind stuttered and his rhythm collapsed, you moved. Like lightning, like poetry in freefall, like every answer to every question carved into the edge of time. Your crude wooden sword whistled through the salt-soaked air. A single stroke, clean, brutal, perfect, crack, wood against bone, thunder without a storm. And just like that, Kojiro fell. The fencing master, the blade dancer, the undefeated legend. Now a broken shape in the sand. The sound echoes off the cliffs, then dies. Even the gulls stop mid-screech. Even the sea seems to pause. Silence. Not stunned. Not reverent. Hollow. You stand there, breath steady, heart still. No joy. No triumph. Just the rhythm of the tide and the weight of something that feels an awful lot like history pressing against your chest. Another duel. Another name. Another legend fallen. And yet, something's different. The witnesses don't cheer. They don't rush forward. They just stare. Fishermen holding half-eaten rice balls, unmoving. Retainers frozen in disbelief. Even the samurai, those masters of control, can't hide the ghost rising in their eyes. They aren't looking at a man. They're looking at a myth made flesh. Or worse, something beyond myth. Because today wasn't just a fight. Today wasn't about pride or vengeance or titles. It was the end of something. The end of balance. The end of rivalry. The end of the last man who could walk alongside you in the same breath, in the same moment, in the same world. And now, he lies there, Kajiro folded like a fallen fan in the blood-specked sand. You lowered the bakken. Slowly, reverently, like laying a piece of yourself to rest. Because, in a way, you did. And then the cold sets in, not from wind, not from wounds, but from understanding. You look around at the faces. No celebration. No pride. Just silence. You didn't just beat him. You became something they can't comprehend. And in that moment, it hits you not as a revelation, but as a quiet truth you've been running from. At a certain height, there are no more rivals. No more equals. Just a single, wind-swept peak. And you, standing at the top? Alone. You turn, no bow, no flourish. Just quiet footsteps back toward the shore. The sand crunches beneath you, like memory. The waves lap at your ankles, as if asking where you'll go next. But you don't answer. Because today, the world has given you the only answer you needed. Victory has a price. And that price is loneliness. Ganrakujima fades behind you. The sea resumes its rhythm. And as your small boat drifts you back to shore, your crude wooden sword resting beside you, you can't help but glance at your reflection in the water. You don't see a warrior. You don't see a winner. You see a man untethered. Later, they will call you invincible. They will write songs about how you came with a stick and shattered steel. How you didn't just defeat Kajiroyu ended the age of equal duels. They will carve your name into stone and into the hush of firelight stories told by warriors who never dared face you. But none of that matters to you now, because you're starting to see there's no one left to fight. You step ashore, and for the first time in years, you feel no hunger for the next challenge. Only a quiet sadness. Not regret, not guilt, just the weight of being the last of your kind. The last wolf in a land now full of sheep and echoes. Back in town, a child whispers your name like a curse. An old man drops his cup when he sees you pass. A young swordsman bows, unsure whether to flee or beg for a lesson. You say nothing to any of them, because how do you explain that the moment you became the strongest, you also became something else? And still you walk, because what else is there? You left everything behind for this path. You refused wealth, titles, lords. You wandered half the country barefoot and bruised, eating radishes and meditating under waterfalls. All to reach this point. And now that you're here, what happens after the final duel? You don't know. Not yet. But something inside whispers that the sword your faithful companion no longer your only tool. That perhaps now the blade must rest, and the brush must rise. So, if you followed the journey of Katsuro Renjiro this far, through battles, blood, and silence, don't stop now, because what lies ahead is not another fight. It's something richer, something deeper, something transformational. The warrior has conquered the battlefield. Now he must conquer himself. Subscribe or follow the channel, because the next chapter is not about war. It's about wisdom. And Renjiro's greatest duel is just beginning. The body lies behind you now still, silent and surrendered to the earth. His name already rippling out into the wind like smoke. Kajiro, the swallow cutter. But he's no longer man nor legend. He's become something else, a story, already twisting at the edges, sprouting new versions like weeds across the island's sands. As you board the boat, the oar you used as a blade bumps against the hull with a dull thunk. It sounds misplaced, awkward even. But so do you. The old man rowing says nothing. He doesn't ask who won. He doesn't need to. That silence, it tells you everything. You stare at the island as it shrinks behind you, a patch of rock and earth now married forever to your name, a name that feels heavier than ever. You can already hear the poets sharpening their quills, the drunks lighting up their fables. They'll twist the story into every shape but the truth. Some will sing, some will argue, some will lie. In you feel none of it. No victory, no pride. Only this strange, quiet sense of finality. Something irreversible has happened. The road you walk now isn't paved with glory. It's no longer about fame or even greatness. It's about meaning. Because when you've carved through every challenge, when the last worthy opponent has fallen, when you're standing atop a mountain made of victories, what's left to fight? The waves slap gently against the boat as the wind drags your name across the sea, whispering it to every shore. And still, that question lingers in your chest like a wound. What do you conquer after you've conquered everything? Kajiro's death doesn't settle like your other duels did. It doesn't feel like another name added to the list. It lingers, like smoke in your cloak, like blood under the fingernails, like loss. At first, you try to shrug it off. You've done this before. Fought, won, moved on. But it clings to you. Because Kajiro wasn't a pompous village brute or a puffed-up dojo master begging for a lesson in humility. He was real. A reflection of your own obsession. A mirror held up by fate. A man who could have walked beside you if the world had been kinder. And you broke him. Not just his body. You shattered his spirit. What was once a duel between men became the end of a chapter neither of you had written but both had to finish. The crowd celebrates, of course. They always do. The tales are already changing. You hear them drifting down the mountains, across inns, inside sake shops. He showed up late on purpose, just to rattle him. He carved his sword on the way there just to mock him. He struck so fast, Kajiro didn't even blink. Next week, someone will say you rode to the island on a giant carp. By next month, they'll claim you defeated Kajiro using a tree branch dipped in ink. Some stories you smirk at. Some you scoff. But deep inside, none of it feels like victory. It feels like a door closing. And you know, with all the certainty of steal it, will never open again. With Kajiro gone, the world doesn't feel bigger. It feels smaller, dimmer, hollow, because now you know there are fewer and fewer men who understand. Fewer who can dance with death the way you do. Fewer who speak that unspoken language of steel, sweat, and silence. Fewer who can show you that same terrible beauty you crave. You didn't just defeat Kajiro. You outlived him. And somehow, that hurts more. Nights grow colder, even with the fire burning. You sit alone, staring into the flames, watching the dance of orange shadows. The fight plays back in your mind not as regret, not as guilt, but with a kind of aching respect. He made you reach deeper. He made you better. He made you remember what it felt like to be pushed. Now he walks beside you, not in flesh, but as a phantom, a presence trailing you, quiet but constant. And you know, he'll never leave you. The road ahead, it's still there. Still dusty, still endless, but lonelier, quieter. Every victory from now on feels like it comes with an echoa faint voice asking, was that one really necessary? You understand something now, something no swordmaster ever warned you about. It's not the fight that will undo you. It's the emptiness it leaves behind. After Gunrakujima, the world hails you as invincible. The swordsman who ended Sasaki Kajiro, the Ronin who walks through storms without flinching, the man with no master, no equal, no fear. People follow your footsteps like children chasing shadows. They swing sticks in the street, pretending to be you. They drink to your name in smoky inns. They argue over your stance like priests interpreting scripture. But you feel nothing. There was a time when victory roared inside you, when winning was a fire that lit your path. But now, it flickers, dim, hungry, starved for purpose. You walk through villages like a ghost, a monument to your own myth. Men bow, women whisper, children grin wide. And yet, you're not there. Not really. Because the only thing louder than their cheers is the silence inside you. You pause once, in a mountain town you don't remember the name of. A drunkard raises a cup to you, sloshing rice wine across the floor. Here's to the blade who broke Kajiro. People laugh, clap your back, tell you they'd follow you to war. You nod, say nothing. Because what are you supposed to say? I killed the last man who made me feel alive, and now I carry his ghost like a second shadow? That's not a story they want. They want legends, not loneliness. And so you walk on, one foot in front of the other, not chasing victory anymore, chasing meaning. Maybe you'll find it in a painting, maybe in silence, maybe in teaching. But for now, the road is all you know. If this is your first time walking beside Katsuro Renjiro, then you've already seen what happens when a man rises above all rival sand, what that costs. But the next steps, they're not about fighting. They're about what's left after the blade is sheathed. Subscribe or follow the channel to witness the next phase in the journey not of the warrior, but of the man who walked too far beyond the edge, and now must figure out how to return. They tell stories now, ridiculous, oversized, myth-soaked stories. Renjiro took on 10 assassins and didn't spill a drop of his say. He sliced a falling maple leaf in half from the other side of a stream. He stared down an entire dojo, and they surrendered before he even drew. You smile when you hear these tales. Nod politely. Lift a cup to the sky like you're toasting the nonsense. But inside, it tastes like ash. Because you know something the world doesn't. Those duels, they were never about building a legend. They were never about becoming feared or etched into history. They were about the hunt, the pursuit, that endless, grueling, breath-stealing journey towards something complete, something true. And now the journey feels hollow. You used to dream of titans to match you, of blade singers and brilliant strategists who could push you to the brink. Now you dream of still water, of pine trees whispering in the wind, of places where no footsteps follow yours, because there's no one left to chase, no worthy rival waiting in some distant village. The world has become too soft, too careful, too breakable. You watch warriors now like an old wolf watching pampered pups play fight on velvet floors. They polish their armor, they polish their egos. They chase court titles and noble brides and pretend the battlefield is a stage. You don't belong there. Not in their castles, not under their banners, not behind their thrones. You belong to the in-between, to the crossroads, to the forests, to the dirt path that only one set of footprints marks. And with every victory, you realize something brutal and true. Triumph is a kind of death. Not death of the body, but of the hunger, of the fight, of the reason to keep going. You've won too much. And the cost is not glory. The cost is solitude. Deep, unshakable, echoing solitude that no laughter, no sake, no crowd can ever reach. So you keep walking. Not toward duels, not toward destiny, but toward a kind of silence. A silence that's been calling to you quietly all this time. Not the silence of defeat, but of transformation. Not the hush of the crowd, but the stillness before understanding. You still carry the blade, yes, but your footsteps begin to slow. Not because your body is weakening. You're still fast, still lethal, still sharper than a drawn fang in the moonlight. But something inside is shifting, something deeper, something ancient. A Vasana, loud, not urgent, just steady, whispering at the edges of your soul. The battle isn't out there anymore. It's in you. You begin to vanish from the world. Not in body, in presence. You stop answering challenges. You stop traveling toward the noise. You wander through forests and over wind-scoured ridges alone. Weeks blur, months dissolve. The crowds forget. The swords grow quiet. You draw your blade less. Instead, you draw ink. Not in blood, but on paper. Calligraphy, first awkward at first, scratchy. But it flows. It begins to move like your old blade. Fluid, precise, alive. You carve not warriors, but foxes and tigers from driftwood. Your hands, once used to break men, now shape beauty. And it terrifies you. Because for the first time, the violence fades. And what rises in its place? Peace. You study Zen now, not from temples, but from the earth. You meditate under waterfalls so cold they stop your breath. You fast until your mind floats like mist. You sit motionless for hours. And when you finally move, it feels like breathing for the first time. You begin to understand. Mastery isn't in domination. It isn't in crushing your opponent into the dust. True mastery is knowing when not to draw the blade. True strength? It's the choice not to strike. You remember what it felt like to be the wild wolf, the killer that shredded his way through Kyoto's best and left nothing but echoes. That wolf still lives in you. But now, he's calm, not caged, not broken, just quiet, not out of fear, but because he understands now that peace can be sharper than any blade. Still, they come. They always come. Young ones with fire in their eyes. old ones with regret in their bones. They want to test themselves. They want to feel your legend in their lungs before they die. You say little. You fight fewer. Most turn away without a duel, because they see the truth in your eyes. You stopped looking for enemies. Now you're looking for yourself. One day, in a small mountain village, a boy asks you, "Master Renjiro, what's the strongest move in sword fighting?" You kneel, look him in the eye, and answer, "Putting the sword down." The boy doesn't understand, but someday he will. And so your journey continues, not toward thrones, not toward applause, but toward that whisper on the wind, a different kind of mastery, the kind that cannot be seen, only felt, only earned. Somewhere, far away, someone will say, "You're gone," that Renjiro the Ronin vanished into the mountains, that he faded like smoke and never returned. Let them say that, because they'll never understand what happened to you. They only knew the warrior. They never met the man you're becoming, the man who walked past every challenger, who conquered every master, who set down the sword and picked up something far more dangerous: stillness. If you've come this far with us, you've seen what happens when power meets peace, when the sharpest blade dulls not from use but from understanding. What comes next is not a duel. It's not a conquest. It's the final evolution of a man who walked beyond violence and met himself in the silence. Follow or subscribe the channel to walk the last steps of Renjiro's path, the path not of a swordsman, but of a soul, learning to be whole. Sometimes challengers still come. Sometimes you answer with steel. Sometimes you answer with a glance, a word, a silence sharper than any blade. And every time, whether the clash is physical or not, you win. Because now you're fighting a battle far more difficult than anything the world ever threw at you. You're fighting the battle inside. And slowly, breath by breath, silence by silence, you're winning. Eventually, even the vast open road begins to feel crowded. The mountains, once your refuge, seem filled with echoes. Echoes of your name, your past, your victories, your ghosts. You need quieter. You need deeper silence. So you vanish, not into legend, into the mountain. You retreat to a place the world has no interest, in a shallow scar carved into the earth by time and weather. No shrine, no servants, no glory. Just a cold, wet cave hugging the side of a forgotten peak. Locals call it Shiryo Iwata Spirit Rock. You don't come to conquer it. You come to let go. You bring almost nothing. A few ink scrolls, a writing brush, and of course, your swords, though they remain untouched now, sheathed and slowly dusting over like old memories. Inside this stone tomb of stillness, you're no longer Renjiro the Ronin. You are not the duelist, the legend, the storm. You're simply Renjiro the student, a student of silence, a student of death, a student of life itself. The cave becomes your final teacher. Where the blade taught you power, the stone teaches you patience, the kind of patience only time understands. The dripping of water onto rock becomes your metronome. Even the spiders spinning lazy webs above your straw mat seem wiser than half the generals you once outwitted in battle. Everything speaks here, and you're finally listening. For the first time, you see it all clearly. All the battles, all the duels, all the bruised lords and humiliated warriors. They were shadows, reflections on the wall of a cave, flickering in the firelight of your own ambition. The real war? It was never with them. It was always with you. So now, you fight in a new way. You don't swing a sword. You dip a brush in ink. And every stroke is a strike. Every sentence, a parry. Every paragraph, a clean kill against ignorance and ego. You write not to boast. You write to understand. The brush becomes your weapon. but not a weapon of destruction, a weapon of revelation. Each day, your calligraphy flows more fluidly, your essays more refined. You put onto parchment what the blade never could explain: the strategy of the spirit, the rhythm of real power. And beneath all of it, the whisper of truth that has taken you a lifetime to hear. Visitors still find you sometimes. Curious pilgrims, wayward swordsmen, a few too eager challengers who've heard the name Renjiro and want to test themselves. Some you turn away with kindness, some with sharp truth. Most you turn away with silence, because you've learned something far deeper than victory. True strength isn't the ability to defeat others. It's the discipline to master yourself. And down here, beneath a mountain, in a cave that barely breathes light, you're winning your greatest duel one breath at a time. In the quiet of Shiryo-iwa, with the wind sighing softly across the cave mouth like a companion too old to speak, you come to a decision. It's time, not for a battle, not for another name to cross from your list. It's time to teach, not through blood, but through words. You sit cross-legged on the bare stone floor. The ink bowl reflects the flicker of your fire. The brush rests in your fingers, light as a sparrow's bone. You begin to write. Not a diary, not a victory record. Something deeper, something eternal. You begin what will become your final offering to the world. The Scroll of 5 Realms. It's not a sword manual, though swordsmen will study it. It's not a spiritual text, though monks will meditate on it. It's a map, a blueprint, a coded whisper to anyone walking the edge between violence and understanding. You divide the teachings into 5 scrolls, each tied to a natural force. Stone, stream, flame, wind, void. Each scroll layers over the next, not as instructions, but as refinements, each one sharpening the reader like a blade against water. The stone scroll, the foundation, the root. It teaches you to stand still, to know where you are in the chaos of battler, the chaos of life. Without grounding, a strike is just a flail. Without purpose, movement is meaningless. The stream scroll, flow, adaptation. It shows how to become formless, how to bend around the blade without breaking, to find paths where others see walls, to become water, not stone. The flame scroll, strike, burn. This scroll pulses with action timing, momentum, the clean fire of decisive motion. To know not just how to fight, but when. The wind scroll, vision, understanding. Here, you learn to see beyond the edge of the sword, to read intentions, to unravel patterns, to feel your enemy before they strike. The wind carries secrets. You must listen. The void scroll, the hardest, the one most won't understand. It teaches what cannot be seen, only felt. How to act without acting. How to master death by embracing emptiness. Not the absence of everything, but the presence of everything else. In the stillness of your mountain cave, the words come fast and clean. You are no longer the duelist. You are the mirror. And what you reflect will echo through time, long after your name has faded. Students will come long after your bones return to dust. They'll study your scrolls, not for technique, but for truth. They'll see you not as a warrior who crushed schools and humiliated nobles, but as a man who conquered the only battle worth fighting, the war within. And now, as your brush pauses midair, as the ink dries across the final parchment, as the wind returns to hum at the cave's mouth, you smile. You've fought enough. You've bled enough. You've walked long enough. The blade rests. The soul sharpens, and the world will carry your wisdom, even when it forgets your face. If this story has moved you, if the path of Renjiro, the storm-born warrior who became the silence himself, has left even a whisper in your own heart, follow or subscribe the channel, because the duel never truly ends. In the next chapter, might be yours. There are some who say that the greatest sword ever forged wasn't made of steel. It was carved from silence, sharpened by stillness, tempered in the furnace of a mind that refused to blink beneath the weight of truth. And in the final moments of your life, you don't hold that sword, you become it. You've written all there is to write. The scroll of 5 realms sits beside you, still drying in places, but alive. Not with ink, but with your essence. Each stroke of the brush was a duel, each phrasia parry against the dullness of the world. And now, with the last mark made, you set the brush down, not lightly, but with finality. You do not sigh, you do not cry, you smile. Outside the mouth of Shiryo-iwa, the seasons turn like the slow hand of an eternal clock. Snowflakes drift silently past your cave in winter. Petals from mountain plum trees flutter past in spring. The river below swells and dries and swells again. Time itself bows to you now, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. It knows you're leaving. You don't greet the end with sorrow, because you understand something that only the rarest few ever grasp. This isn't the end of the path. It's the completion of the circle. Death doesn't arrive like a thief to steal you away. It approaches slowly, deliberately, like a student hoping not to disturb his master. And you welcome it. Not with desperation, with discipline. You fought every kind of battle. The duels in mud, steel, fire, silence. The political ones, the spiritual ones, the war for your own soul. And now, one last opponent waits. But this one doesn't bleed. This one doesn't bow. And you don't need to draw your blade. Because for once you choose not to fight. You dress simply, not in ceremonial robes, not in armor, but in the same clean garments you've worn every day since you first put down the blade and picked up the brush. Your hair, once wild as the storm, is now gathered, bound. Your skin, weathered by 1,000 suns, carries the faint glow of peace. Your swords lie beside you, not raised, resting, not to defend, to witness. Your right hand rests on your katana, your left on your wakizashi, not to strike, to say goodbye. These blades were not your weapons. They were your companions. They knew the tremble of fear and the tremor of joy in your hands. They drank blood. They carved silence. And now, they keep vigil. Your students gather outside the cave. The few who have stayed. The few you allowed close enough to hear your true voice. Not the one that shouted across battlefields, but the one that whispered truths into ink, wind, and water. They do not weep, because they know this is not a death of defeat. This is the final victory. You sit cross-legged, straight-backed, unmoving. You breathe in the mountain, air-sharp, cold, pure. You feel the rock beneath you. And then, slowly, you feel your blood begin to slow. Your limbs grow still. Your breath shallows. But there is no panic, no grasping, no fear. Only presence, only peace. And then, nothing. No sound, no motion, no struggle. Just a man becoming still enough to disappear. Renjirathe's storm, the wolf, the warrior, the wanderer, dies as he lived, undefeated, unbroken, untamed. There is no cry of pain, no gasp for air, only silence. The kind that comes after a song has finished, and everyone knows they've just heard something that will never be sung again. Later, they will carry your body from the cave, wrapped not in silk but in the legends of your own making. They will not entomb you in gold. They will not build a castle around your bones. They will leave the cave as it was, cold, quiet, watching, because they know this was never your prison. It was your temple, and it remains yours, even in death. Outside, the wind picks up. 1,000 cherry blossoms are torn from the trees below, caught in the sudden current. They dance through the air, twisting like blades, soft and sharp all at once. Some say they never land, that they still ride the wind across Japan. Whispers of you, of Renjiro, not the swordsman, not the killer, not the legend, but the man who became something greater. They'll talk about your duels. They'll whisper about your technique, your silence, your madness, your clarity. But most of them will never truly understand that in the end, what you mastered wasn't the sword. It was the one who held it. And for those few who do understand, who open your scrolls, read your teachings, walk the path without flinching, they will not say, "He fought with 2 swords." They will say, "He fought himself and won." Long after your bones have vanished into the loam, long after the sword is rusted, the ink has faded, the cave returned to quiet dust, your name refuses to go. Not because of the battles, not because of the blade, because of the breath between them, because the truth you etched into time was never about domination. It was about discipline. Your name, once spoken with awe by trembling swordsmen, now echoes in places you never walked, in boardrooms and battlefield camps, in libraries and living rooms, in minds seeking edge, purpose, clarity. Renjiro, they whisper, the one who walked alone and came back with fire in his hands and silence in his soul. They speak of you as both myth and man. One tale says you could cut lightning from the sky. Another insists you once defeated a general's entire guard using a rice paddle and a sneer. Some even claim you were born from mist, shaped by wolves, raised by ghosts. Let them speak. You don't rise from your grave to confirm or deny, because you're not buried. You're embedded. In legend, in ink, in the folds of scrolls and the scars of seekers. The scroll of 5 realms, that battered manual you bled into with brush and breath, becomes more than parchment. It becomes a weapon in the hands of the wise, a compass for the lost, a mirror for the bold. Samurai study it. So do CEOs. Philosophers quote you in lectures. Boxers tape your words to their walls. Artists whisper your verses before they paint. Fighters tattoo your wisdom onto skin they expect to bleed. Your truth transcends time because it wasn't built for time. It was built for the human condition. Observe clearly. Move decisively. Adapt like water. Strike like fire. Know yourself. Utterly. You become something rarer than a hero. You become a mirror, a challenge, a path, a silent voice inside those daring enough to walk alone. Statues rise. Paintings flood museums. You're reimagined in anime, in games, in novels with laser swords and cyberblades. They render your life in pixels and poems, but none of them really get it. Because the real Renjiro was never just the man standing victorious on blood-soaked dirt. He was the figure in the cave, the man who traded the steel edge for the soft truth, who laid down the blade, not in defeat but in understanding, the man who faced the only worthy opponent, himself. And when people ask centuries from now, what was Renjiro's greatest teaching? They'll expect techniques, footwork, forms, maybe an origin story laced in fury. They'll be wrong, not because those things weren't true, but because they weren't truth. Your greatest duel wasn't with Kojiro, or the brothers of the fallen schools, or the cowards who came in ambushes and left in pieces. Your greatest duel was with ego, fear, need, and you won. Not with brutality, with clarity. You showed that mastery isn't about beating the world. It's about refusing to be beaten by yourself. No lord, no title, no applause. Just you, the brush, The blade, the moment, and that was enough. You taught that power without purpose is just noise. Skill without spirit is just shadow. And that every duel was only ever a mirror. The blood was never the point. It was the moment before the first move. The moment when a warrior either blinked or became something more. Your book isn't about killing. It's about living. Fully. Fearlessly. Strategically. It's about being the sword and the hand that holds it. The fire and the water. The stillness and the storm. Even now, when a lone student picks up a Bakken for the first time. When a soul at a crossroads opens your book to the wind-marked page. When someone stares into their own reflection and finally faces it. Your voice is there. Not shouting, not preaching, just quietly nodding. As if to say, you already have everything you need. Now walk. And they will. Because they carry the fire you left behind. Not to burn the world, but to light their own path through it. You died with nothing in your hands but silence. But you left behind a weapon the world will never forget. A life sharpened to truth. If this journey stirred something in you, if you heard the whisper of the blade in your own heart, follow or subscribe the channel. Because Renjiro's story is over, but yours has just begun.